The rain hit Incheon like it was angry about something. Inside the black Genesis SUV parked at the far end of the arrivals bay, Jade Williams sat perfectly still and watched it fall. She had learned, in 29 years of life, and several of them involving the kind of risk that made other people's palms sweat, that the worst thing you could do in a bad situation was move before you understood it. The cameras outside were the situation. There were 3 of them, 2 entertainment reporters and 1 wire photographer, all positioned at the barriers just past the terminal exit, all pointed at exactly the angle that would capture anyone leaving through the main doors. She had spotted them before her driver even slowed down, and she had made the decision quietly and immediately. She was not getting out of his car yet. Jade Williams did not do cameras. Not the unplanned kind. Not on the day she had just flown into Seoul to finalize the acquisition of 3 of the country's highest-performing industrial companies, a deal that the financial press did not know about yet and that she intended to keep that way for exactly 72 more hours. She had built her wealth in the way that made old money nervous, fast, silent, and through the kind of instinct that could not be taught in any institution. By 25, she had turned a tech logistics company she started in her mother's spare room in Lagos into something that operated across 4 continents. By 27, she had been on 3 lists that she had asked her publicist to suppress. By 29, she was sitting in a car in Seoul in the rain, anonymous, and she intended to remain that way until she was ready to be otherwise.
Her phone was in her bag.
Her mind was already 2 steps ahead of the evening. The hotel, the review documents, the call with her legal team at 9. She was thinking about none of that when the door opened. She did not open the door. The door was open from the outside, and a man threw himself in from the rain, shook water off his jacket sleeve, exhaled, and looked up. They stared at each other. He was not her driver. He was wearing a suit that was worth more than most cars, and his face had the particular quality of someone who had been managing the world at a distance for so long that being caught wrong-footed was a new experience. She registered with the automatic efficiency of a person who had been studying Korean business landscapes for 8 months, Kwon Seojun.
The Kwon. The heir.
32 years old, net worth that put him in a different stratosphere from most, and currently sitting in what was apparently his own car looking at her like she had materialized from the ceiling. "This is not your car," he said. "No," she agreed pleasantly. "But I cannot get out of it right now." He looked toward the terminal exit. He saw the cameras. Something shifted in his expression, a flash of recognition, followed by something more complicated. "Those are entertainment reporters," he said.
"Yes."
"And a wire photographer on the left. I assume they are here for you and not for me, but that distinction will not survive the photograph." He looked at her. She looked at him. His phone, which had been face down on the seat beside him, began buzzing.
She did not look at it.
He did not pick it up. It buzzed again. And again. And then it stopped and a notification sound went off instead. 1, then 3 in rapid succession, then 2 more. The kind of incoming pattern that was not a coincidence. She watched him look at the phone. She watched something change in his face. Not panic, he was not a man who panicked. But something heavy and swift moved through his expression like weather, and he set the phone face down again, with the careful deliberateness of someone putting something away before they had to deal with it. "Are you all right?" she asked. She had not intended to ask. It came out anyway. "Fine," he said. The phone buzzed again. On the seat between them, a document had shifted when he got in. A single page, half visible, the Kwon Group letterhead at the top, and several lines of Korean text below it. She did not read Korean with the speed she read English, but she read it well enough, and the words she caught in the 2 seconds before he noticed and flipped it over were words she understood. Inheritance. Transfer. Tonight. Brother. She looked out the window. The cameras were still there.
"Your father," she said.
Not a question. He went very still. "You read that." "I read Korean." "I apologize. I was not trying to." She held his gaze. "He is threatening to transfer everything to your brother if you do not appear tonight with a woman." The silence in the car, was the kind that had weight. "That is a private family matter," he said. "It is," she agreed. "And I would not have mentioned it except that I have been sitting in your car for 4 minutes and the cameras outside are not moving and I am trying to understand how long this impasse is going to last." He said nothing. She thought for exactly the amount of time she needed to think. 8 months of building toward a deal that required no publicity, no entanglement, nothing that would complicate the next 72 hours. One woman who was very good at appearing exactly as much as she wanted to appear, and no more.
This was not the plan.
"I will go with you tonight," she said. He looked at her. "I need to be somewhere that is not visible to those cameras for the next 3 hours while my team handles the evening press cycle for a transaction that is not yet public. Your family's house is private. It solves my problem."
She paused.
"You have a different problem. I can solve that too if you want." "You are a stranger," he said. "You got into my car." "It is my car." "Then we are even." She looked at him steadily. "I want nothing from you. I am in Seoul on business. I intend to be unknown for exactly 3 more days, and then my business will be public, and I will not need anonymity anymore. Tonight I need a room that is not a hotel and not a camera shot."
She paused.
"You need a woman who will walk through a door. The geometry works." He looked at her for a long moment. "Who are you?"
"Jade Williams," she said.
"Pleased to meet you." She extended her hand.
He looked at it.
Then he shook it. And whatever he had expected to find in Seoul this evening, it was not this. "Hyunwoo," he said to the driver. "Hanamdong. If that opening grabbed you, hit like right now. This is going to be a ride. Stay with me." The ride to Hanamdong was 22 minutes. Jade used every one of them. She established the story with Seojun in the way she established the terms of any working arrangement, clearly, efficiently, with both parties understanding exactly what was agreed and what was not. They had met 4 months ago through a mutual business contact in London. They had kept the relationship private because both of them valued privacy. She was in Seoul on business, she could not name yet. He had asked her to come tonight, and she had come because it mattered to him. "What do you do?" he asked. Because even in crisis, a man like Kwon Seojun did due diligence. "I run a company," she said. "What kind?" "Several kinds." He looked at her. She looked back. She had the very specific expression of someone who is being less than fully transparent and knows that the other person knows it and does not care. "My family will ask," he said. "Then I will answer them," she said. "I am very good at answering questions." He said nothing, but something shifted in his posture, a fraction of the tension releasing, the way tension releases when a person accepts that they are not in control of a situation and decides to stop fighting that. She also asked him, in those 22 minutes, about his family. Not the public version, the internal version. Who was who? What each person wanted. Where the pressure points were. He told her, because there was not enough time to be cautious about it, and she had framed the question as intelligence gathering rather than curiosity, which it was. His father, Kwon Seojun, ran the family empire the way generals ran campaigns, with total authority and zero tolerance for the unexpected. The ultimatum about tonight was not the first one, and every time Seojun had failed to produce a satisfactory fiancé, something had been taken, a share, a board position, a subsidiary. Tonight was the final line. His father had put it in writing, which meant it was not a threat. It was a schedule. His mother, Madame Kwon, managed the family's social architecture with the precision of someone who understood that reputation was a currency more durable than money. His uncle Byung-soo was the kind of man who had spent his whole life being the second loudest person in rooms run by his older brother and had mistaken volume for significance. And then there was the grandmother, Hwang Oksun, 81. She had built the original foundation of the company in the years before it became what it was now. She was the only person in the house, he said, whose opinion he respected completely. Jade filed all of it. The estate appeared at the end of a private road, behind iron gates, at the top of a hill that looked down over Seoul like a feudal claim. The gates opened when the car approached. Staff appeared at the entrance. And as they walked in, Seojun said quietly, close to her ear, "Whatever they say to you tonight, do not let them see it land." She looked at him. "I never do," she said. The reception room was assembled and waiting. The family turned as one when the door opened. The silence that followed was a specific kind. Not the silence of surprise. The silence of assessment. Rapid, collective, merciless. Jade felt it move over her like a physical thing, taking inventory of her skin, her hair, her coat, the absence of Korean lineage visible anywhere in her face. "She is not the Shin girl," Kwon Seojun said. He said it to the room, not to Seojun. Like she was not present enough to address. "No," Seojun said. "She is not." Seojun. His mother's voice was precise and cold. "Explain this." "Her name is Jade Williams," Seojun said. "She is with me." The madam looked at Jade the way a person looks at something that has been placed in the wrong location and needs to be removed before it causes a problem. "Where is she from?" "Nigeria originally," Jade said. "Though I have spent the past 8 years primarily between London, Singapore, and New York." "Nigeria," the madam repeated. And the single word contained an entire opinion she did not feel the need to elaborate on. Uncle Byung-soo, glass in hand, did not bother with a word. He turned to the man beside him and made a sound, low, dismissive, the kind of sound made specifically for someone to hear, that communicated everything he thought without requiring him to articulate it. Jade looked at him briefly. She said nothing. She had a system for people like Byung-soo. You gathered information first, and you chose your moment. This was not her moment. The evening had just started. What happened next was what always happened at the beginning of these rooms. The family moved to dinner, and the interrogation began, wearing the costume of polite conversation. "What does your family do?" the madam asked, once they were seated. "My mother is a retired professor. My father built infrastructure, roads, water systems, energy networks across West Africa for 30 years. And you?" "I run a company," Jade said. "What kind of company?" Daehoon said. He was at the head of the table. He had not looked directly at her once since she entered. He was the kind of man who withheld direct attention as a form of power, the implication being that you had to earn the eye contact. "Several kinds," she said. The same answer she had given Seojun. Just as pleasant. Just as closed. Daehoon looked up. Their eyes met for the first time. He looked at her the way he probably looked at balance sheets that didn't add up, not with emotion but with the focused patience of a man who would eventually get to the number he was looking for. She looked back at him with nothing at all on her face. "You are vague," he said. "I am private," she said. "There is a difference." A comment below. What do you think is about to happen at this table? Because, I promise you, nobody is ready for what's coming. The second course was where it broke open. Byung-soo had been building towards something all evening. He had that particular energy of a man who has decided to do something and is waiting for the right pause in the music. The pause arrived when Madame Kwon asked, with her precise social smile, whether Jade had any family connections in Korea. "None," Jade said. Byung-soo leaned back in his chair and addressed the table, not Jade in Korean. He said, slowly, clearly, without any attempt to lower his voice, that this was exactly the problem. That Seojun had apparently lost his mind. That bringing a black foreign woman to a Kwon family dinner was either an act of rebellion or an act of stupidity, and in either case, it was an embarrassment. He said that she had no lineage, no value to the family, and that the fact that she was sitting at this table at all was an insult to the Shin family and to everything the Kwon name stood for. He said all of this in Korean because he assumed she did not speak it. The table listened. A few eyes moved Jade to observe the impact. Jade was cutting her food. She continued cutting it. She put a piece in her mouth. She chewed. She swallowed. She set her chopsticks down with a small, precise click, and she looked at Byung-soo. "Kwon Byung-soo SSI," she said. In Korean. Clear, correct, unhurried. I counted 4 factual errors and 2 logical fallacies in what you just said. I will not address all of them because we have other courses left and I do not want to ruin anyone's appetite. She tilted her head slightly. But the central claim that I have no value to this family is the one I would like to correct. Not because it offends me, because it is imprecise. And imprecision at a table like this seems like something your family should care about. The room was completely silent. Byung-soo stared at her. His face ran through several configurations. Seojun had gone absolutely still. She could feel it without looking at him. You speak Korean, Dae-hoon said. Still from the head of the table. Still with the same flat weight. I do, Jade said. She looked back at Dae-hoon calmly. I have spoken it for the past 3 years. I was not hiding it. I simply had not been asked a question in Korean until now. You let my brother-in-law finish his remarks, Dae-hoon said. I let him finish because interrupting people before they have said everything they mean to say means you respond to half their argument, she said. I prefer to respond to the whole thing. Something moved across Dae-hoon's face. Just for a moment. She caught it and moved on. The dinner continued. The questions became more aggressive in the way that questions become aggressive when a room has decided to dislike someone and has found that the person refuses to crack. What was her family's standing? What was her business? Who did she know? Was she after the Kwon name? Was she after the money? Was she aware that this family had obligations that went back 3 generations and that those obligations required a specific kind of alliance? Jade answered everything. Not defensively.
Not warmly.
With the specific clarity of a person who has nothing to hide and nothing to prove and knows the difference. It was during the 3rd course that Madame Kwon set down her utensils and said, with the controlled finality of someone who has made a decision, I think perhaps it is time for our guest to call for her car. The implication was not subtle. It was not meant to be. Several people at the table looked at their plates. Seojun opened his mouth. And then something slid off the side table near the window. It was a small green card in a lacquered holder, the kind used at the most exclusive investment institutions in Korea, the kind that was issued only to the top tier of financial members, the kind that was itself a credential more than a contact. It had been sitting in Jade's coat pocket and had worked loose when her coat shifted against the chair. It hit the floor face up. Seojun reached down and picked it up before she could.
He looked at it.
His expression did something that was very controlled and very shocked at the same time. He turned it over and handed it back to her without a word. But Min Jae, sitting closest to him, had seen the face of the card. He had seen the institution name and the tier designation. He looked at Jade with an expression that had completely changed from everything it had been for the past 2 hours. That card, Min Jae said carefully, is issued only to members of the Apex Investment Council. There are fewer than 40 of them in Asia. The table looked at the card in Jade's hand. She tucked it back into her coat pocket with the ease of someone returning a pen. 37, she said. Currently. Madame Kwon, who had just suggested she call her car, said nothing. Dae-hoon looked at her across the table with an expression that was, for the first time since she had sat down, something other than dismissal. What company, he said. Not a question this time. A different thing entirely. I will be able to tell you in approximately 72 hours, she said. When my current transaction closes and the press announcement goes out. Until then, I am afraid I have to remain vague. Which I know you find irritating. A transaction in Korea, Dae-hoon said. In Korea, yes. Significant. Significant enough that I cannot be photographed by entertainment reporters outside an airport on the evening before it finalizes, she said. Which is why I am still in your house and not at my hotel. The silence at the table was a different quality from all the previous silences. It had the texture of a room that has just been told it was operating with incomplete information and is recalibrating at speed. Byung-soo was looking at the spot where the card had been. His glass was half raised and forgotten. Grandmother Hwang Oxen, who had not spoken once during the entire dinner, made a sound. From the corner where she had been sitting with the stillness of someone who had seen every version of this family's performances for 80 years. A small, dry sound that in another register would have been a laugh. She looked at Jade with bright, sharp eyes.
"Come here, child," she said.
In Korean, the same unhurried certainty of a woman who is not accustomed to being declined. Did that card moment get you? Hit that like button. We are not even close to the best part yet. The grandmother's chair was in the corner by the east window, and when Jade sat beside her, she felt the whole room rearrange itself around that fact. The most powerful woman in this house had chosen a side. In full view of everyone. Without asking anyone's opinion. "You are composed," the grandmother said to Jade. In Korean, low enough that the rest of the table could not hear. "I try to be," Jade said.
"No.
"You're not trying. You simply are." The grandmother looked at her directly. "That is different. Trying is visible. What you have is not visible. It is in the bones." Jade looked at this woman, 81 years old, white hair, the eyes of someone who had survived enough to stop performing anything, and she felt the specific recognition of meeting someone whose intelligence operated at the same frequency as your own. It happened rarely. It was unmistakable when it did. "Your grandson," Jade said quietly, "is going to lose everything his father promised him if tonight does not go well." "I know," the grandmother said simply. "I have known for months. Dae-hoon has been building to this. Are you going to do anything about it?" The old woman smiled. The real one. Not polite. Not social. The actual one. That came from somewhere deep and unhurried. "I already am," she said. She looked at the table. At Dae-hoon, who was watching them from across the room with an expression he was working hard to keep neutral.
He does not know it yet.
The dinner broke up slowly. Jade said her goodbyes with the precision of someone who had attended 100 difficult rooms and knew how to leave one without giving anyone the satisfaction of the last word. She shook Dae-hoon's hand. He took it, which itself communicated something. She nodded to Madame Kwon.
She did not look at Byung-seo.
Seojun walked her to the car. The rain had eased. The Seoul night was clean and sharp, and the city spread below the hill like someone had tipped a box of lights. They stood at the gate. Neither spoke for a moment.
"Your uncle," she said.
"I know," he said. "I should have. You should have stopped him earlier, yes. But you didn't. I handled it. It's done." "You are not angry," he said. It was not quite a question. He was studying her face in the dark, looking for the thing she was not showing. "I have encountered much worse," she said. "In rooms far less interesting than that one." He was quiet. "Then, they're going to take the company. My father." His letter tonight was formal. "I have until the end of the week." She looked at him. He was looking at the city below, not the expression of a man who is panicking, but the expression of a man absorbing something heavy at the place where things are absorbed before they can be dealt with. "I know," she said. He looked at her. "I read Korean," she said. "I told you that." "I know. He stopped. He was not used to people knowing things about him that he had not chosen to share. She could see the discomfort of it, and she did not rescue him from it. Sometimes discomfort was information. "Go home," she said. "Not here. Your own place. Not this house." He looked at her. "I don't. You need to not be in that building tonight," she said. "Whatever happens with your father, you need your head clear. You cannot think in a house that is currently making you its problem." She held his gaze. "Do you have your own place?" "I have an apartment in Itaewon," he said. "I rarely use it." "Use it tonight." He studied her for a long moment. She could feel him calculating, not what she was exactly, but what category she fit into, and finding that she did not fit into any of the available categories, which she suspected was an experience he did not often have. "You are very easy," he said. Not as a compliment, exactly. As an observation that was confusing him. "I am not easy," she said. "I am clear. There is a difference. Easy bends. Clear just doesn't waste time." The car arrived.
She got in. The door closed.
And for the second time that evening, Jade Williams left the Kwon estate with Kwon Seojun standing at the top of his driveway watching her go. He stood there for longer than made sense. He went to the Itaewon apartment. He sat in the dark for 2 hours. Then, he did something he had not done in 3 years. He called a woman to apologize. She picked up on the second ring. "You are calling to apologize for the family," Jade said. "Yes. You don't have to. I want to." "Kwon Seojun," she said. "I walked in knowing what kind of room it was going to be. I made a choice. The things that happened in there were not your doing, and they are not your apology to make." Byung-seo is a man who uses language as a weapon when he has no real ones. I have encountered that variety before. I am not damaged by it. Silence on the line. He was trying to find the crack in her. He could feel himself looking for it, and he could feel that it was not there, and he did not know what to do with that. "Are you at your apartment?" she asked. "Yes." "Good. Stay there tonight. Don't go back to that house. Don't answer your father's calls until morning." A pause. "You need to be a person for a few hours before you have to go back to being the heir." He was very quiet.
"Jade," he said.
First name.
He had not used it before.
It came out differently from the way he said other words. Less controlled.
"Good night," she said.
"I mean that. Go to sleep." The call ended. He lay in the dark of the Itaewon apartment that smelled slightly of disuse and thought about the shape of that conversation. She had set the boundaries so cleanly and so without apology that he had not even felt the edge of it until he was already on the right side of it. She was not keeping him at a distance because she disliked him. She was keeping him at a distance because she knew, with the certainty of someone who has seen what happens when distance is not kept, that proximity without foundation was not a gift. It was a problem. He stared at the ceiling. He thought, "This is not a woman I have met before." He thought it for a long time. Subscribe right now because what is coming next is the thing nobody saw coming, not even Seojun. We're not done. 3 days later, it happened. Kwon Dae-hoon moved with the efficiency of a man who had planned every step before taking the first one. On a Thursday morning, while Seojun was in a meeting with his operations team, the legal documents arrived. Not through a message or a call. Through a courier in a sealed envelope, delivered to Seojun's office reception desk like a bill. The letter inside was formal and complete. His inheritance, the shares, the board positions, the revenue stake in the 4 main Kwon Group subsidiaries, was being transferred to his younger brother, effective the following Monday. There was a clause at the bottom, in smaller print, that was more surgical than the rest. The apartment in Itaewon, the car, the operating budget for his personal office, and his corporate card would all be suspended at the same time. His assistant knocked once and came in and saw his face and quietly left and closed the door. Seojun sat in his office with the letter in his hands and the Seoul skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and he did not move for 20 minutes. He was not surprised. He had known this was coming. He had known since the night in the car, when he had seen the messages pile up on his phone and read the tone of them, that his father's patience had finally expired. Knowing something is coming does not, it turned out, make it arrive gently. He had built his section of the company into something real. Not the part he inherited, the part he had grown, the contracts he had negotiated, the international partnerships he had constructed over 9 years of work that started before anyone took him seriously. And now all of it was in a sealed envelope on his desk, transferred on paper to a brother who had not done the work. He did not call his father. He did not call his lawyer. He sat with it. He did not call Jade. He had spoken to her twice since the dinner. Once when she had texted to ask if he was all right, with the brevity of someone who asks because they mean it and not because they need an answer. He had said he was fine. Once when she had called to confirm that her business transaction had closed, she said this quietly, without elaborating, and that she was staying in Seoul for the foreseeable future. He had said he was glad, which was more honest than he intended. He had not told her about the letter. He did not know how to explain it to her. Or more precisely, he knew she would hear it without pity, and he was not ready, in that particular moment of humiliation, to have someone see him clearly. But Jade Williams had not become what she was by missing things. She had a source inside the Kwon Group. She had 3 sources, in fact, because she always had 3 sources for anything that mattered. One never knew when one would dry up. She heard about the transfer within 4 hours of the envelope's delivery. Not the details.
The fact.
And the fact was enough. She sat in her hotel suite on the 41st floor with Seoul below her and the acquisition documents open on her laptop, and she looked at the ceiling for a very long time. She had known this was a possibility when she agreed to walk through that door. She had not known it would happen this fast. She had not known, and this was the part she was less comfortable admitting, even in the privacy of her own thinking, that she would care about it the way she apparently did. She was not in the business of caring about things that were not her business. She had built her entire life on that principle. Stay in your lane. Do your work. The world's problems are not your problems unless you make them yours. She called her manager, Park Jin-hee, at 6 p.m. Park Jin-hee was 44 years old and had worked for Jade for 6 years and had long since stopped being surprised by what Jade asked her to do, because what Jade asked her to do was always, eventually, correct. I need you to identify the Kwon Group subsidiary that Seojun Kwon built personally, Jade said. Not the inherited positions. The one he grew. The Busan Port Logistics Company, Jin-hee said, without needing to look it up. KP Meridian. He took it from a 400 million won annual revenue to approximately 9 billion over 7 years. Is it currently on the block? A pause. The transfer documents would put it under the brother's control as of Monday, which means technically the brother could sell it. And there has been quiet interest from 2 investment groups already. I want to bid, Jade said. Jin-hee was quiet for a moment. You want to buy KP Meridian? I want to submit an offer. Through the shell we used for the Singapore deal. The bid needs to be high enough that the family cannot refuse it without looking irrational. How high? 15% above the highest competing offer. Whatever that turns out to be. I want to know the moment it moves. Jade. Jin-hee said her name the way she said it when she had a question that was not strictly professional. This is not a strategic acquisition. No, Jade said. It is not. It will cost. I know what it will cost, Jade said. Do it. She ended the call and sat with the city below her and the feeling that she was doing something that she could not entirely justify on paper. She was not a woman who did things she could not justify on paper. She picked up her phone. She put it down. She picked it up again. She did not call Seojun. He would find out when it was done. He would find out in a way that could not be traced back to her, because she had not done this for him to know. She had done it because it was correct. Because 9 years of work should not be undone by a family that was punishing the wrong person for not being who they wanted him to be. She told herself that was the reason. She was mostly telling the truth. If you felt something just now, that's the story working. Like this video and keep reading. The next part is the one that will stay with you. The offer arrived at the Kwon Group board on a Friday morning and it caused, as Jade had calculated it would, a specific kind of problem. Kwon Dae-hoon was not a man who turned down money. He had built an empire on the principle that the right offer at the right moment was not something you refused on principle, you refused it on strategy, and strategy meant knowing when holding something was worth more than selling it. KP Meridian, the port logistics company that his son had built, was worth holding. It was a long-game asset. He had planned to keep it under family control, regardless of which son ran it. And then the offer came in. 15% above anything on the table. Anonymous bidder, clean structure, cash-backed, no contingencies. The kind of offer that appeared perhaps twice in a decade, and that every responsible board was obligated to bring to the table without editorializing. Dae-hoon looked at the numbers for a long time. He called his legal team. He called his financial advisors. He tried to identify the anonymous bidder, because Daehoon never walked into a room without knowing who was in it, and he found a shell structure so clean and so multi-layered that his best people came back with nothing. He sat with the offer for 48 hours. On Sunday, he authorized the sale. The transfer of KP Meridian completed on Monday morning at 9:15. Seojun found out at 9:16, when his former assistant forwarded him the notification that had gone to all former stakeholders. He was sitting in the Itaewon apartment that was now, technically, no longer funded. He read the notification twice. He looked at the name of the acquiring entity, WJ Capital Holdings, registered in Singapore, and he did not recognize it. He did not know why, but something made him pause on that name. He called Min Jae. His cousin answered immediately. "I was going to call you," Min Jae said. His voice had a quality in it that Seojun recognized, the quality of someone who has information they are not sure how to deliver. "You know something about the buyer," Seojun said. "I know something," Min Jae said carefully. "I cannot confirm it. My source is not solid. But WJ Capital Holdings registered in Singapore 3 years ago. It has made 9 significant acquisitions in that time. Every one of them, every single one, was a company that was being mismanaged or undervalued or stripped by the wrong people."
He paused.
"And my source told me that the W and J in WJ Capital are initials." Seojun was very still. "Williams," he said. "Jade Williams," Min Jae confirmed quietly. The line was silent for a long moment. "She bought my company," Seojun said. "She bought it anonymously through a shell entity before your father could let it go to someone who would dismantle it," Min Jae said. "And she paid so far above market that the family could not turn it down without looking irrational. Which means your father sold it without knowing who he was selling to, which..." Min Jae paused. "Seojun, I think that might be the most elegant thing I have ever seen done to this family." Seojun sat in the quiet apartment for a very long time. He thought about the ride from the airport, the 22 minutes in the car, the way she had offered to help him without making it feel like help. She had framed it as a geometry problem, 2 people with compatible problems in proximity. He had been grateful and had not looked behind the framing. He thought about the dinner, about how she had moved through that room, not trying to win the family over, not performing, just being entirely and completely herself at every moment. He thought about the card. The investment card that sat in her coat pocket like a business card sat in anyone else's. He thought about the way she had said, "I run several kinds of companies," and had looked at him with the expression of someone who was being less than transparent and did not need to apologize for it. He thought about the phone call. "Good night. I mean that. Go to sleep." He thought about what it meant that she had gone to all of this, the research, the bid, the shell structure, the 48-hour wait, and had not told him, had not called him to report it, had not positioned herself as the person who had rescued him, had simply done it and said nothing. He called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. "WJ Capital Holdings," he said. A pause. Short. Then, "Yes. You bought my company." "I bought KP Meridian," she said. "I am always looking for well-run logistics assets in the Pacific Rim." It met the criteria.
"Jade.
"It is a sound investment," she said. "The financials are strong. The infrastructure is solid. The 7-year growth trajectory is better than anything comparable in the region. I would have bought it on those merits alone."
"Would you have?" he said.
She was quiet for a moment. "The timing was also relevant," she said. It was the closest she was going to come to admitting it, and they both knew it. "You did not tell me you were doing it."
"No." "Why?"
"Because it was not for you to know," she said. "It was not done so that you would feel grateful or indebted or obligated. It was done because it was correct. Because the work you put into that company was real, and it should not have been a pawn in your father's game." A pause. "What you do with the information now is your business." He exhaled slowly. He looked around the Itaewon apartment. The bare walls, the city light coming through the window, the life he had not quite moved into yet. "My father's going to find out who bought it," he said. "I expect so. Not today." But eventually,
She was calm about this.
completely calm, the way she was calm about everything, not because she did not feel it, but because feeling it did not improve the analysis. When he does, the family is going to say you did it to insert yourself, to get leverage. They're going to say that, she agreed. They're going to say it because that is the only framework they have. In their world, everything is leverage. It will not occur to them that someone could act without an angle.
Did you, he said.
Act without an angle? A longer pause than any of the previous ones. I acted correctly, she said. I always act correctly. What else is behind that is not something I am going to discuss on a Monday morning phone call. He almost laughed. The thing that almost became a laugh moved through him and didn't quite make it out.
Can I see you, he said.
Not because of the company. Not as a favor or an obligation. He stopped. He tried again. I would like to have coffee with you somewhere that does not belong to my family. Just that. Silence on the line. I have a meeting at 2, she said. I am free at 4. I know a place in Buckshin, he said. Old tea house. Very quiet. Nobody will recognize either of us. You checked my schedule again, she said. I did not, he said. He paused. My assistant did. She made a sound. It was not quite a laugh either. It was the sound of someone who finds something exasperating and endearing at the same time and is not ready to admit to either. 4 o'clock, she said. Send me the address. The call ended. Seojun sat in the Itaewon apartment with his phone in his hand and the Seoul morning going about its enormous ordinary business outside the window. He had lost his inheritance. His father had stripped him of 9 years of work in a single legal document. The company he had built from a struggling logistics firm into something real was now owned by a woman he had known for less than a week. He did not feel the way he had expected to feel. He felt, instead, the particular alertness of someone who has been looking in one direction for a very long time and has just understood that the thing they were looking for was behind them. He sent her the address. She replied in under a minute, 4 o'clock. No more. No less. Just that. In her hotel suite on the 41st floor, Jade Williams set her phone on the desk and looked at it for a moment, and then she picked up the acquisition documents and went back to work. She had 2 more companies to finalize. She had a legal call in 40 minutes. She had a full morning ahead of her that required her complete attention. She gave it her complete attention. She thought about the tea house in Buckshin exactly once, at 11:45, when she was reviewing a clause in the second acquisition document, and the city outside her window was doing that thing it did in November, the particular quality of the light, flat and gold at the edges, that made Seoul look like a place that was worth arriving in. She thought about it for approximately 30 seconds. She went back to the document. She was very good at this. She was becoming slightly less good at it, which was information she was not yet ready to do anything with. But she noted it. She noted everything. And at 4 o'clock she was going to walk into a tea house in Buckshin and sit across from Kwon Seojun and drink tea and have a conversation that had nothing to do with cars or cameras or family dinners or companies, and she was going to hold herself to the same standards she always held herself to. She told herself that. She mostly believed it. The city moved through its afternoon. Seoul in November, cold and bright, and full of things that were just beginning. And that is where we leave them.
For now.
Drop a comment. What was the moment that got you? Was it the dinner? The card? The company? Tell me where you are watching from and whether you want to see what happens at that tea house. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs a Jade Williams in their life. Subscribe and hit the bell because this story is not finished and you do not want to come back to find you missed something. You don't shrink for rooms. And you don't need anyone to rescue you, but sometimes, quietly, you rescue them first.